Welcome back, fantasy managers. This is Devo 1099 or Tom, fantasy football backers. We have a special guest today. We have Will, or you may know him better as Saramek. Is that how you pronounce it, Will?
That's correct, yeah.
So Will is out in Manchester and agreed to join us today. Get to pick his brain a little bit and find out, how a high roller like Will has made his start in Mondogoal. So how long have you been playing on Mondogoal?
I started playing towards the end of the last Premier League season. So I would say April, May. That's when I first sort of saw it and started playing around a bit. It went quite well to begin with. And so over the summer, I thought, well, I'll put a bit of time into creating a kind of more data-driven approach to it rather than just more like subjective picks. And yeah, it's been going relatively well since then.
All right. So I think that's reason enough to be adequately scared of your competition in Saramek here. But Will and I are going to discuss Game Week 13. We wanted to go over some of the industry stuff. So on Twitter, I've mentioned, I know this isn't too relevant in the UK yet, but I live in New York, and I'm no longer able to play on Mondogoal. Come next week, there's a chance I won't be able to play on any of the daily fantasy sites, which is obviously a bit concerning from my standpoint. But it's relevant in the sense that, we don't know who's going to survive and be the operators in the UK. I think it's safe to say that there's going to be interest, and this is a product that will be out there, particularly because the UK doesn't have the gambling concerns that they have in the US. But, the damage that losing New York would have to Draftkings, to a Fanduel, is pretty substantial. So right now we're talking about them moving over to the UK. But, if their legal troubles get much worse here, they start spending too much money there, and they can't really afford to make a big splash, we could see other operators popping up. Will, in your sense, it seems like you've played primarily on Mondogoal. Are you excited about the prospect of DraftKings and Fanduel coming over?
Yeah, definitely. Initially I thought they were going to come over in October, and then that didn't seem to happen. I presume because of the legal troubles they were having in the US. I think, Mondogoal's been great in that they've allowed us to start playing daily fantasy football in the UK from, I think they started like over a year ago. But I think when DraftKings arrive, they're going to, even though Mondogoal have had a head start, Mondogoal are going to find it quite hard to compete with DraftKings, given they have such an established interface already, a very kind of smooth, intuitive interface currently. And then to back it up, I suppose, quite a big marketing budget to go with it. So yeah, it will be interesting to see how that battle plays out if and when DraftKings arrive in the UK.
Yeah, and the other question is, let's say Fanduel comes over as well. Is there room for three? There ended up not really being room for three in the US. Draft Street was really, neck and neck with Fanduel for a while. They ended up getting passed by DraftKings and then purchased by DraftKings about a year and a half ago. So that'll be interesting. Mondogoal has some great partnerships with clubs, which should give them, a decent stance if they can turn that into more users. But as you mentioned, like the Mondogoal interface it hasn't caught up, and they've been kind of inching along and making some improvements. But you're looking at a late swap promise. They've mitigated that by changing the slates around and not including the early games and some of the late games. But you kind of would like to see everything. The NFL over here, you get the full week if you want the full week, and you get the Monday night games and all of that. And I know that Mizungo, another backer, he really likes to have the full options, and that helps diversify teams and allows you to differentiate. I do think that given the fact that they don't have late swap right now, that this is probably the better alternative rather than locking lineups at for the noon game. But DraftKings is going to walk in and already have this set up, and that's going to be interesting to see how those companies coexist and how much they really invest in the UK. The troubles in the US may force them to try to move the UK up faster, or it may cause them to pull back. It's really it's tough to say. I certainly didn't imagine that I was potentially not going to be playing daily fantasy in a week. So my thoughts on this have been wrong before. But do you have any other specific issues with Mondogoal that you were looking to get fixed?
I mean, late swap is obviously a big one, and it's probably the one, if I could ask for anything, that I would like to see the most. I'd like to see first. The interesting thing I heard yesterday that came out of the Massachusetts regulation, the proposed regulation from the Attorney General out there, was, I think she basically said that you're not allowed a late swap on site. If that's the case, maybe playing late DFS in the future, that won't be a differentiating factor that DraftKings have over Mondogoal. We'll see. But I assume it'll be allowed in the UK. But if DraftKings pulls their players between the US and the UK, if they're competing in the same competitions, then maybe they won't be offering late swap anyway.
Yeah, that's an interesting. That was one that a lot of the proposed regulation to me makes sense. I'm okay with the vast majority of it. I'm not typically a big multi-entry person. I like to make one team, maybe a couple teams, but I don't necessarily, all the scripting and these big time guys. I think that kind of takes some of the fun out of it. But late swap, I don't know that there's a huge kind of consumer protection reason not to have it. So it could be a matter of the Massachusetts Attorney General not totally understanding what it was, or linking, the controversy with the percent ownership being leaked too early, and thinking that was kind of the problem. So I'm not totally convinced that late swap will be, something that they are that concerned about. But if that's the case, that's the case. That would be a minor issue. But I agree, it is a differentiating factor for DraftKings versus FanDuel. So that would definitely be something that I think DraftKings will try to fight for. Over the next 60 days or however they have to respond. But I mean, I think that Mondogoal is making some strides, but they're not where DraftKings is in terms of usability, and they've maybe got a month to really catch up. So it'll be interesting to see what.
I like to be fair to Mondogoal. I think, as things stand, they have a better scoring system than DraftKings do for soccer, for UK football.
So it used to be DraftKings was probably a little too goal and assist dependent, but then you could mitigate that with guys that had crosses, and even though that was kind of silly, you could justify using a guy. Robbie Brady is always the example brought up for crossing, because he's not necessarily a goal threat. He has his moments, but he's not necessarily a goal threat on a week-to-week basis. But, he's getting 10 crosses. For Hull, he was great with El Mohammadi on the other side. But then, but if you had Aguero and he scored twice, you weren't beating me with Robbie Brady.
Right.
But, the new DraftKings scoring includes corner kicks, which I have a significant problem with, just because I don't think that being the player assigned to take corner kicks has any influence on your ability influence the outcome of the game,
Completely
and
agree. Yeah.
it's just an assignment, you know. And you know, if it was corners one, that would be one thing I could probably deal with. But you know, corner kicks are only even scored what 3% of the time, something like that. So it's not even a big time scoring play. So it just that one bothers me. I like the Mondogoal scoring. I think they've done a good job. My biggest concerns with it last season uh, were fouls and yellow cards. I thought that they were just it was too much, and they did mitigate that a little bit.
It's still very severe though. If a player picks up a yellow card, they get the foul and the yellow card for minus 2.5 points, which for some players, you're picking them, you're expecting like 6 points out of them, especially the cheaper ones. And if they pick up a yellow card, it's like, well, you know, he's just had his points cut in half pretty.
Yeah, and I don't think that you could make the argument that a yellow card hurts your team, you know, at a rate of, what is it, you know, 62% of what an assist helps your team. You know, that I don't think that balance makes any sense. I think that fouls one should have stayed at a point rather than getting knocked down, just because I think there is a skill in drawing fouls. You know, tactical fouling happens all the time. I mean, that's how the Spurs are surviving right now. And
said by a true Arsenal fan, right?
Yeah.
Eric Dyer sliding them down in midfield.
But yeah, I think that yellow cards are a little, you know, because they're subjective and because, you know, they're, you know, a guy like Coquelin or Diego Costa, you know better. You know they're going to be in line for a yellow, but it's all the other guys that, you know, will get it for like time wasting at the end of a game or something like that. And it's like, come on, like I've lost so much money on that in like extra time or something like that.
It's ridiculous. I don't want to even tell you my bad beat stories for the yellow cards. They're horrendous.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, but they added cards on DraftKings now too, and kept crosses and added corners, and I agree with you. I think Mondogoal scoring is, you know, I like it to kind of just make sense. You know, like if you go and you look and you know, pricing can mitigate this somewhat, where eventually DraftKings pricing will catch up and strikers will be, you know, 5,000 and Robbie Brady will be like 8,000, and it won't make any sense, but at least, you know, you won't have to use them every week. But I look at Mondogoal and for the most part, their salaries and their scoring makes sense. Like the players that do well, you watch the game and you're like, all right, that guy had a good game. You know, there are degrees, but I'm more comfortable with that on Mondogoal than I am on DraftKings.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess we should get to game week 13 here. We'll try to cover all the relevant guys, but we don't want to drag on here too long, or I think we'll lose all of our viewers. Let's go straight to the early game, which we can probably cover in about 30 seconds because there's no interest and it won't be on many slates. But Watford hosting United. United looks like they're going to be down Martial. Rooney may be playing striker. But these two teams, God, I think this could be incredibly boring. Would you even consider any of these players for daily fantasy?
Well, I always give a slight bias to the early kickoff game because you know those players are playing, right? On Mondogoal, no late swap. You know a risk that they're not going to start when you pick these guys. I think it's going to be interesting to see who United play up front, you know. If they do pick someone like Depay as opposed to Wilson, you're probably thinking they're going to have a lot of the ball that game. So then you get players, you know, like Mata, who thrive on having a lot of possession. But yeah, I think I agree with you. I can't see myself picking. I might pick one player from this matchup, but no more. Watford, maybe Igalo is a contrarian pick, but no one else.
Yeah, Lingard's been interesting. I think he's shown he's he's one of those players that's just kind of earning his way into the lineup. It makes no sense to me why Ander Herrera can't manage to stick. I always like him. Last year he played really well despite Van Gaal's not wanting to play him. Both him and Mata kind of earned their way back into the lineup through injuries. Rooney, I think is kind of done. But I guess, like you said, like you have the security of players in the lineup. There's certainly some defenders that you could take on United and De Gea, but he's fairly expensive on most sites. So
really expensive on Mondogoal at the moment.
Yeah, there's no big contest for the early match. So let's move on to, I think, to me, this team is going to be the most important to call right tomorrow. They've kind of been the most important to call right all season because they've been bad. Chelsea hosting Norwich. It's particularly in Mondogoal, the prices for Chelsea players are to the point now where they're priced like Norwich players essentially. How have you been handling Chelsea as the season's gone on, and how will you be handling them tomorrow?
Chelsea have cost me quite a lot of money this season. Eden Hazard in particular, kind of 14 million at the start of the season. I was picking him. He, like just about every other Chelsea player, hasn't done anything this season. So I don't think I'm going to be picking him against Norwich. Maybe Begovic, who's still only 5.5 million on Mondogoal, looks like a good option. There's a strong chance of a clean sheet there. Certainly rather spend 5.5 million on Begovic than whatever De Gea is at like 10.5 or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, on the whole, probably steering relatively clear of Chelsea, and especially in the early. If I'm submitting a lineup for the early kickoff, when you just Mourinho right now has been changing his lineup like drastically every week, so you can't really count on him playing anyone except maybe Willian and Begovic. So to start trying to pick people like Fabregas hoping they're going to play, I think is too risky, especially for a cash game lineup.
Knowing where Fabregas is in the 11 is important too.
Exactly.
Costa is 5.8 on Mondogoal, which is just it's so cheap for a player who last year was headed towards a golden boot if he could have kept his health and temper under control. Is he only a differential at this point, or is he somebody that you would even consider for cash games? Obviously, you didn't mention him, so I can't imagine you are. But would you risk any money at all on Diego Costa's success?
In cash games, no, I don't think so. Even though he's only 5.8 million, there are a lot of cheap striker options on Mondogoal that I think that would represent probably a safer pick than Costa this week. That said, maybe all of a sudden I will play him tomorrow, but at this stage, I don't think I will.
Yeah, I toyed around with the team last night, and initially I had him thinking that I would need the money, and then I didn't really need the money, so I got off of him, and I felt so much better after that happened.
Especially as he could easily get sent off, and that's basically your day over on Mondogoal with -5.
His downside is so significant, and he just doesn't seem right. And the one thing is it seems like he's been able to score on inferior teams, for the last few months, and this is certainly an inferior team. Norwich has been pretty poor defensively away, so I think that I would probably have some exposure to him on the larger contest type team. But I wouldn't be particularly excited about it. For Norwich, yeah, only Robbie Brady and only on DraftKings, and nobody in the UK is playing on DraftKings yet. But one to keep in mind. Maybe his price will catch up by the time DraftKings opens over there, hopefully. All right, let's go to Everton and Villa. So if Begovic and his defenders were an option, certainly Everton against Villa, all over the pitch for Everton. You've got to like their options. Villa did look a little bit better, a little more secure in Garda's first game. Does that give you pause, or are you looking at Everton's entire team?
It gives me a little pause, but I'm definitely going to be having a number of Everton players in my lineup this weekend. The defense, I could easily see Everton keeping a clean sheet this weekend, and their defenders are pretty cheap, and they're generally quite active defenders as well. They don't just pick up points through clean sheets; they pick up points through passes and tackles and drawing fouls too. So yeah, I see a lot of value in the Everton defense, and yeah, I am. Like you said, Villa played well against City 2 weeks ago, and no one was really expecting that. So it'll be interesting to see if they can keep that going, or if that was just an anomaly. That is the only thing that's holding me back from this game.
Yeah,
everything else I like about it.
I've never run numbers on it, but I kind of have that intuition that when a new manager comes in, a team kind of steps it up. They're playing for their jobs a little bit more. They're focused. Maybe they had a manager they didn't get along with, so there's more effort. I don't know. That may have been kind of the bounce we saw from Villa. They're not going to be home this time, and they just lost to Mavi for the season, who is really one of their sparks from the back.
Another ACL injury.
Another ACL injury. It's been fast and furious this year. I think that Deulofeu's looked really good. He's eligible at forward with probably a little higher floor than some of the other strikers.
Yeah,
actual strikers. Lukaku, in the same sense of Costa, I feel like Lukaku tends to play better against inferior opponents. He had that run in Europa last year where he was just scoring 1 or 2 every week, and then couldn't get it done in the Premier League. That was costly for me. Baines may be back. I don't think.
Really?
Yeah, that's the rumor. He was in training. Whether or not he starts, I'm not positive, but he may be back, which kind of takes the shine off Coleman a little bit. I would have probably played Seamus at 6.7. But if Baines is back, he kind of, he'll get some of that crossing duty and some of the more attacking. So I still like Coleman just because I think I agree with you that a clean sheet seems possible. Howard's not been particularly good, but I think he's been kind of fortunate. The Sunderland match where they won 6-2, it could have been 6-4 very easily. Like, I think he was saved by the post a couple times, and he kind of gets out of position fairly regularly now. Jagielka is also a knee injury.
Yeah, he's out.
So he's out. So I feel like you're betting against Villa's attack, which I think has probably been the safest bet of the season. But yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if Howard let 1 or 2 in. I just wouldn't be.
Yeah, Gusted is out for Villa, which he was probably looking like their most dangerous player.
I didn't see that.
For this season.
Yeah.
So it's kind of left, I think, Jordan Ayew, because Agbonlahor's not fit either. Scott Sinclair, maybe. I think he might be injured too. I can't remember. So it's hard to see where the goals are going to come from.
Yeah. No, I'm more willing to bet on Everton keeping a clean sheet than Chelsea by a landslide.
And you save yourself quite a lot of money in the process as well.
Yeah, and stress. All right, let's go to Newcastle hosting Leicester. This, according to the bookies, this seems like a more even match than I think most daily fantasy players would think when they look at the two teams. Newcastle's looked a little more functional lately. I don't really buy their defense. But I do like Ayoze Perez and Mitrovic up top. I think Sissoko's looked like he's paying attention, which is always a big question. And Wijnaldum, he's a guy that I would be very happy to see in my opponent's team, just because he's so random. It's just a lot of headers and he can't really do much with the ball. But that said, those are at least interesting players. And then of course Leicester, we have the royalty of Jamie Vardy and Mahrez. Are you willing to fade Jamie Vardy when you know their team's going to do everything within their power to get him a goal?
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? Because he almost 2 weeks ago when he played, it looked like he wasn't going to score that game, and then he got the penalty from Mahrez, and that was painful because I'd faded Vardy that day and had Mahrez in my team. But yeah, I am willing to. Right, exactly. I am willing to cause myself a lot of pain and stress and fade Vardy again this weekend. If it comes to it, I'm definitely happy to do it. He looked like he picked up a knock in the international break.
Yep.
So he's not going to be as sharp, probably. Even if he plays, he's not going to be as sharp as he normally is. Yeah, and I think, you're paying quite a lot for him now. What is he on Mondogoal?
10.5, I believe.
10.5, yeah. And there are so many cheap, as I said before, and Mitrovic is one of them whilst we're on this matchup. There are so many cheap alternatives to Vardy that I just don't think it's worth spending that extra. I mean, 6 million you save by playing Mitrovic ahead of Vardy. And I don't think there's much difference. I mean, there's a bit of difference, but I don't think there's much difference in their respective chances to score. So,
I've been a big Mitrovic supporter. I didn't have him in the game where he got sent off. I think who was that, Arsenal?
Yeah, I can't remember. I didn't have him then either.
Maybe not. But his price is it's so low, and
ridiculous.
He can draw some fouls. I think he had one game where he drew 7 or 8 fouls, something like that, and he just hasn't quite scored. But he looks dangerous. He
really does.
He's good at receiving the ball. He's not a terrible passer, and I've been pleasantly surprised by his attitude. I don't think he's the troublemaker necessarily that we were led to believe he was. He seems to really feed off the crowd at Newcastle, and it seems like he's kind of a fan favorite, which I think will keep him under control. My only thing with him at 4.3 million is I'm not sure you're going to need the money unless you're going to force in guys like De Bruyne and Eden Hazard or something. But
sure.
I agree that the value is certainly there in exchange for Vardy. It's just, man, when Vardy scores, you're going to feel so silly because it was so obvious. But and then you're going to be sitting on Lukaku or something, and he's just not going to be paying attention. But it's a tough call, and that's another one that he is expensive. He has worse goal odds than 5 or 6 other guys. But would I be shocked if he scored? No, not at all. What about Mahrez? He seems to be a favorite of yours. You looking at him?
Yeah, I like him. And I think it's probably where I'll spend some money this weekend. He's just one of those action junkies that gets involved in everything that's going on the pitch. So, yeah, I mean, Vardy, he can, yes, he's popped up with a goal every game in the last, 9 games or something. But strikers can go missing in games. And especially now, teams have probably got a game plan for Vardy because they're worried about him and he's coming on the back of this great run. I feel like Mahrez is a safe play. He's always going to be involved. And he always has the chance to score. And he's an assist guy as well. So, yeah, I like him.
But almost definitely will not have penalty duty.
Well, maybe if Vardy scores first and then Mahrez gets the penalty.
Then you're screwed anyways. All right. Sure. Well, I think that'll be an interesting match. I do think people will be overweight on Leicester, and if you are confident in the other 2 or 3 strikers that you pick, then if he blanks, you're gonna be very profitable. but he's going to be highly owned. It's just too big of a news story, and he's just too likable of a player. He's if you look at the mental side of daily fantasy, if you've owned him in any of the last 9 weeks, you've probably owned him in more than 1 week, and you probably like the fact that Jamie Vardy's in your lineup. So you gotta have big balls to go against him. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
All right. The next match is Southampton hosting Stoke. Two teams that have sort of turned it around, I think, more in the recent matches. Southampton's defense is getting more in line with where they were last season. They had some injuries and new players to incorporate into the side. Stoke, went after this Barcelona junior type lineup, and it just hasn't really happened for them from a scoring standpoint. Are you looking at anybody on Stoke, or is this all Southampton for you?
Yeah, I can't see myself picking any Stoke players this weekend. Southampton, I really like their defense. The great thing about guys like Van Dijk and Jose Font is they can get a goal as well. And if you watch the Southampton set pieces, if you watch the corners, it seems like they have a game plan for every single one. And there's like movement going on in the box. There's signals coming from the corner taker. It just feels like a big threat every single time.
Yeah, they're like an adult version of Brentford, right? Like they're a first division team that is looking at training and health and fitness and set pieces and how to optimize everything and all the analytics side of that. And Southampton's a well-oiled machine with that. And you're absolutely right. I've had Van Dijk a couple times and had absolutely no idea that he would score a goal, and he's come through. He was down around 4 million or so, and I think that you start to watch that and you see like, okay, these guys are going to be legitimate goal threats, and Southampton will keep possession, and they're going to have these set pieces. So, I like those guys. Bertrand hasn't done much. He got an assist, I think, 2 matches ago. He was certainly a daily fantasy darling last season and could return to that. It sounds like Cedric may start over Yoshida.
It's hard to say, really.
Yeah, my understanding is Yoshida was traveling back from internationals, and they maybe didn't want to chance him because they have an option like Cedric. And because Southampton is so concerned with keeping their players fit, I think that Cedric will probably start. I mean, we'll know regardless, but he loves to send in a cross, and when you've got Pella up there getting in good positions, good things can happen. So, what's your relationship with Pella? You like using him? Does it ever work out?
Yeah, sometimes. DFS aside, I think he's a great striker. I just think, when Liverpool bought Benteke in the middle of the season, I was thinking, I mean, Pella's he's the proven article already, and he can play any style of play you want. I mean, he can do the long ball. He's also got good feet. He's got a bit of pace, and I think he would have suited Liverpool's style of play a little bit more than Benteke does. But who knows? Maybe Klopp will turn it around with him. Yeah, I think he's always a solid pick, Pella. He can go missing. I think he did 2 weeks ago. I think he basically just did nothing. But yeah, I don't doubt that he is gonna he's never gonna be bad value, Pella. He's always gonna give you a good chance of getting a goal.
What about Mane and Tadic? Would you consider playing both, or would you choose one? And which one would you tend to choose?
If I have the money, I choose Mane, but I'm very happy picking Tadic as well. I think all these Southampton players have been good to me, kind of the opposite of Chelsea this season. So yeah, Mane is one of those, again, I call him action junkies. He's just involved in everything, and he can score any which way. You can score points from fouls drawn. He gets fouled the whole time. He can score points from just passing it around, assists, goals, everything. So very happy playing him, especially in cash games where you want that low floor. Tadic, he's on penalty duty, which is obviously a big bonus. He's also taking those corners that we were talking about before that, they seem very threatening on. Yeah, he is. I don't know what the price difference is between. Yeah, Tadic is 8 million.
4.4 million. So that's pretty substantial.
So yeah, Mane if I can afford him, but if it's Tadic, then I'm fine with it.
I agree. And I think that price difference, it probably should be a little tighter, but I think that to a degree it's appropriate because Mane is such a bigger goal threat and does have the higher floor, as you mentioned, which is nice for cash games. Like if Tadic doesn't get an assist, and obviously if he doesn't get a goal, he can really kill you. He can get you, 3 or 4 points, and he's not opposed to getting a yellow card or fouling a few times.
And he often gets taken off if the team is winning. Exactly.
So I think he's been a little more secure with his pitch time this year than last year, and definitely more than the beginning of the season where it seemed like they were playing everybody for an hour and then bringing on different midfielders and shuffling everything through. But I think it's strange though, because Stoke is not a terrible team. But the bookies like Southampton in this match as much as they like Everton against Villa. So
really, wow.
Yeah, just about. So that's kind of surprising. I guess they just don't see Stoke scoring here, and I don't know that I do either. Shaqiri hasn't quite come through where I thought he might. So.
He played the most amazing ball against, I think it was Chelsea 2 weeks ago, that just made me kind of fall in love with him again. But yeah, I agree. I mean, Stoke, yeah, even though I'm surprised to hear you say they're as bigger underdogs as maybe Villa are going to Everton, I'm not going to pick any of their players, I don't think. Arnautovic has looked really busy, but he's 6.4, and why would you pick Arnautovic when you could get a bunch of other cheap strikers who are probably going to score more points, and save you a couple of million along the way.
All right, so we like Southampton. Here's a confusing team. Swansea hosting Bournemouth. Swansea started out looking like they were going to be challenging for Europe. I did make a point early on to note that they had been beneficiaries of opposing red cards, and those can make numbers look really, really nice where you're just, you have 80% possession and you're just sending in, shots all second half, stuff like that. But they did look a lot better even during those times. They also, I think what they drew against Chelsea, and that looked like a huge accomplishment at the time. But they've fallen on hard times for sure. Bournemouth as well. That just they've lost so much to injury from an already thin team.
Yeah.
Are you confident enough in Swansea to really back any of these players?
Not really. I think they're still a little bit expensive. I mean, the prices have come down quite a lot given their recent slump, but I can't see myself making room for any of their midfielders. Maybe on a GPP play, Gomez could easily score 2 goals, 3 goals. So heck, when you're, trying to differentiate yourself from other people, he's definitely worth a look. But I don't think I'm going to rely on any of these guys to get me 8-9 points in my cash team.
Yeah, it's and I already don't like myself for saying this, but you look at the tragedy in France and you wonder how that's going to impact, French players. Is Gomis exhausted from talking to his family and worrying about people back home and thinking about this awful stuff, or do they come out and score 2 goals for their country and rip his jersey off and have a French flag under it? I don't know that there's really much to do about that kind of thought, but I know Koscielny may not play. Wenger's worried about his mentality, and it's just it's tough. It's tough to you have to remember that these guys are human beings as well, and I couldn't imagine coming back from a tragedy like that and really being 100% focused. But there's other reasons to question Gomes. I think I do think that we know he can score, and Bournemouth is they're pretty shaky at the back these days. So
I've actually been really impressed with them, how they've played, given the injuries that they've had this season. They're kind of my second favorite team right now. And I think this is probably why I'm not picking some Swansea players tomorrow.
Yeah.
But it's so impressive. And, if you look at the game against Newcastle, which they lost 1-0, the amount of shots, it was ridiculous. Like, absolutely ridiculous.
Dominated that match.
And I can't remember who they played the week before that, but they had a terrible first half. It was something like they were like 2-0 down going into half time. But then second half, again, I mean, they have a team of just really motivated, hard-working players creating all these chances. They're not expensive. They're not, there on big wages or anything. And the few players they did spend money on are out. So it's just...
Yeah.
It's incredible what the performances they're still putting in, despite the circumstances they're under.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Matt Ritchie has been playing better. He's a guy on Draftkings who's, I think he had something like 20+ crosses on Draftkings last week against Newcastle. That was probably the hardest luck loss I've seen in quite some time. Newcastle had basically one shot and Ayoze scored, and then Bournemouth had the ball the rest of the game and couldn't score. But the other game you're thinking of is Southampton.
Is it so? Yeah.
They remind me a little bit of Burnley last season, where they're just so feisty and they're working so hard, but their wage bill is so much worse. The athletes they have are just not a good upstart, British manager. Those teams, they're very similar to me. Fortunately for Bournemouth, they've got a Russian, I don't think he's quite a billionaire, but 100 millionaire behind him, whereas Burnley just has a nice town. So I think Bournemouth will probably, they'll probably go down this year. They'll get the nice little windfall from the TV contracts, and I think we'll see them again. That said, Swansea's struggling enough that I don't think I would be excited. What's happened to Sigurdsson?
I don't know. He's not injured.
No, he's not injured. IU wasn't around last year, but Sigurdsson was a player that I was using very often last year, and it just seems like he's just ineffective this year. I don't know if it's the role in on the team has changed because IU's there, but he's just been shockingly non-existent to me. What about Fabianski, Naughton, guys like that? Would you try them here, or you just like Bournemouth?
Swansea defenders are always worth looking at. They're generally quite attacking as well. Fernandes goes up for corners. Williams is always in there as well. And the fullbacks always get involved too. They're usually a little bit more expensive. I'm looking at their prices now. It looks like they've come down a bit. So maybe I should take another look at them. But yeah, I don't know. I'll probably be going with Southampton defenders and maybe a bit of Everton tomorrow. So Swansea probably be third choice, but still not good enough to get into the team.
I think that's probably a fair assessment, which gives them more value in large contests, because I think everybody's going to kind of make the same measure there.
Agreed.
That game's kind of boring. All right, here's another match that'll be very important to call correctly is West Brom hosting Arsenal. Arsenal's getting towards being fit again, but won't have Walcott, won't have Ramsey. So that leaves Giroud up top, all alone. Alexis, I hear rumors that he may be rested, but those rumors have flown before, and you look at the team and you look at the team. Like, are you really going to play Kieran Gibbs on the left wing and Campbell on the right wing? And when Champions League is done for them, essentially, like, it just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me.
No. And the ridiculous thing is, Wenger will say these things about resting Sanchez, and then Arsenal will go 3-0 up, and he'll still have 2 substitutions to make, and he won't even bring Sanchez off. Like, and then it's off from what he was proposing or implying before the game.
Yeah, maybe it's like his legal team tells him, like, we need to say that we're considering resting him because we've been overworking him so much that if he sues us, we're screwed. So at least act like you're thinking about resting him.
That's definitely possible. It's also, I think part of it is just smoke and mirrors from the managers not wanting their opponents to kind of be able to prepare, knowing who's going to play, you know. So
yeah.
Pulis does it a lot, Mourinho does it a lot, and maybe Wenger is being tempted by it too.
Yeah. So if Koscielny does end up sitting, you know, are there Arsenal defenders? I mean, obviously, if Gibbs actually does play left wing, like, that's kind of a no-brainer, and he'll be highly owned. You know, would you trust Bellerin coming back from injury?
My Arsenal players are probably going to be more than midfielders. You know, Ozil and Cazorla have just been so dependable this season. Cazorla came off at halftime 2 weeks ago, but I think that's just an anomaly. I think he's fit now, and yeah, the defenders, Monreal, I do like. He gets forward a lot. He is quite expensive though, but I would probably pick him over Bellerin. Koscielny I like because he goes up for corners and looks dangerous, but if he's going to be sitting, then
I was looking at some cross statistics as they are very relevant on DraftKings. West Brom has given up the most crosses in the past 4 game weeks, but on top of that, almost 70% of them have come on their right side, so the attacker's left side. Which, as we mentioned, Gibbs, that would just be the easiest pick ever. Monreal may find some more clear room down there. Alexis could be playing on that side. Ozil sort of seems to shade left. So I think those are all plays. And my feeling on Pulis is he can make an inferior team play pretty solid defense, but when he gets up against a legitimate team, it doesn't work. Like, their defense just does not. Last year I think it was wasn't it the last game week of the season? Wasn't it Arsenal against West Brom and Walcott had a hat trick, and I'm pretty sure that was a lot.
I remember Arsenal, knocking up big numbers at the end of the last season, but I can't remember who it was against.
Yeah, and then Chelsea had drawn at West Brom the week before, so people were a little hesitant to use Arsenal players. But anyhow, I don't think that West Brom is going to have a chance to slow down Arsenal. There's nobody on West Brom that I would consider using personally in this match. So Ozil's numbers are just like eye-popping.
Yeah.
I know that he was a little bit of a maligned figure because he was so expensive and then faced injury issues and wasn't all that effective. And he's the type of player that if the team's not really winning, he doesn't always get the credit that he deserves. But so he's had 176 touches in the opponent's final third in the last 4 matches. He's had 23 chances created, and he has 6 assists in the last 4 matches. Like, these are just so much better than any other midfielder available, and yet his price is still below De Bruyne. And De Bruyne's been great, but Ozil's just not really getting credit, partially because he doesn't score goals. But he just seems like a guy that's just very, very reliable. And in a match where they should have a lot of possession,
Yep.
he'll be
It's
in.
almost like the ultimate. I mean, West Brom don't like having the ball at all, and Arsenal love having the ball. So it's just set up for Ozil just to run around with the ball all day, and pass it to Cazorla, and then pass it back to Ozil.
Right. This could be a 100-pass Cazorla game, which just makes him a very easy pick and with a high floor, and he's on penalty duty, and sometimes it's either him or Ozil on free kicks. But I think both those players are really strong options, particularly if you end up using a guy like Mitrovic up top.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, the last match of the Saturday slate is City hosting Liverpool. Sounds like Aguero will be available. Silva possibly.
Yeah. No, I think Silva's out. I think I heard today he's out.
Okay, so Aguero's available, but not necessarily starting. And with that being the late match and him being the most expensive striker on Mondogoal, he might be like somebody you put on one out of your 25 teams if you're in the big one, but I don't really see much benefit there. Would that make you more or less interested in using a player like De Bruyne?
Yeah, De Bruyne's tricky. I mean, I would put Ozil above him just because of the matchup. But if I have money left over, he's certainly a player I like. If Silva's not playing, I still think City will have no problems keeping the ball, and De Bruyne will see a lot of it, and probably he might even get better usage. The team might use him more given that Silva's out. So, yeah, I do like him. I agree, Aguero is just too expensive at that price, and especially as he's coming back from injury. Yeah, I'm not a fan of Sterling. I think he plays better when Bonnie's in the team, so now Bonnie's out. That even makes him less attractive. Yaya is interesting. 11.6 million, one of those players.
We lost you there for a second there, Will. It'll depend on. I think Aguero, if he starts, Aguero may have penalty duty back, which certainly hurts Yaya quite a bit. We'll wait for Will to get his connection back here.
I'm here now. I don't know if you can hear me.
No, we lost you for a little bit there, but it's okay. I told him that you think Yaya is the best player in the Premier League. I don't know if that's true or not, but
sure.
No, I was just saying that I think it'll depend on if Aguero plays, he probably will get penalty duty back from Yaya, which really takes a lot of the
that's true
benefit out of him. There aren't a lot of matches where we look at City and don't love them, but Liverpool is probably a little stingier than they've been. And with not having lineups and the doubt there, that's reason enough. I do like De Bruyne. I always like Kolarov. Yaya's an option, but I feel like there's better options in the midfield.
The thing that, being a nervous City fan myself, the thing that worries me about tomorrow, so Kompany's out. That brings Mangala and Otamendi into defense. Whilst they're both kind of talented defenders, they're also a little bit edgy on the ball, especially Mangala. And with Liverpool playing this kind of high press game under Klopp now, I'm really worried that Mangala is just going to lose it in a really dangerous position, and City will be quickly punished early on.
All right. Well, that's the City fear talking there. I think more than
that's just experience of the last 9 years.
All right. Well, let's go through Sunday, Monday very, very quickly, just because I don't even know if that's a slate that's going to be worth playing when it's all Tottenham and Palace. But
yep.
Yeah, I don't have anything interesting actually about either team. Obviously, Spurs are going to look good against West Ham now playing without Payet.
Yep.
They're not going to have much left, and Spurs have looked a lot better. When they're all fit, it'll be interesting whether Lamela or Son is getting options. Like those are both really strong plays, and somebody's going to get left out, which could make both of them not worth it because one will play an hour and the other one will come on, and vice versa. So that'll be kind of good for Tottenham, bad for daily fantasy players. Palace is still down a striker. I heard Wickham might play.
Yeah, that's an
week.
interesting one. 4.2 million for Wickham. And if he's going to be their only striker up front, he's going to get service one way or another. So,
yeah, but you're locking that team in on Sunday.
Yeah,
and
nothing to do about that.
But at 4.2, it's worth a punt, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, not that exciting. These 2-game slates that Mondogoal put out, they never really get me very excited, and it just feels like a complete coin toss as to who's going to win the whole thing. So, yeah, I never really put much time into mine.
You probably want to get ones that pair up with some of the other leagues so you have more games that day. But all right, well, Will, much appreciated. Thanks for the chat and letting us get inside your head a little bit there. If you want to let us get inside your spreadsheets, that might be a little more helpful for us. But
maybe we can do a trade, Dev. I'm sure yours are better than mine.
Little by little. Good luck this weekend. Hopefully, City and Arsenal continue winning, and we can have a race here at the end. But good luck on Mondogoal. I'm happy to consult now that I can't play on Mondogoal. So
yeah, well, I guess good luck. Good luck with all the New York legislation next week. I hope you're still able to website come next week. It would really suck if not.
Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot, Will.
Cheers, Tom. Okay. Bye.